fired from my job in LA, but walked away with a year's pay and got my boss fired too. This story still feels unreal, like it belongs in a TV drama, but it happened to me back in the early 2010s when I was still figuring out my career in Los Angeles. At the time, I thought I'd landed a dream job as a content creator for a well-known university. Back then, content creation wasn't the huge industry it is today. It wasn't about TikToks or Instagram Reels, it was about crafting polished, professional videos to tell a story or sell an idea. I was thrilled because it felt like a chance to showcase my skills, build my portfolio, and make a name for myself in the city of dreams. But like many dream jobs in LA, the reality wasn't nearly as glamorous. The pay was abysmal, just $2,200 a month. For a city where even a shoebox apartment costs more than most people's monthly income, it was barely enough to scrape by. I told myself it would be worth it because of the opportunity, but hindsight is 20/20, and now I realize the red flags were everywhere. The workload, the expectations, the management, it all screamed run, but I was too caught up in the excitement to notice. The impossible task. On my second day, my manager, Patricia, called me into her office for a one-on-one meeting. I was optimistic, ready to brainstorm creative ideas and start building something great. Patricia, in her perfectly tailored suit and overly rehearsed smile, began by setting expectations. She slid a document across the table, her manicured finger tapping the number at the top of the page, 85. 85 videos, she said, as if she were discussing the weather. That's how many we need this year. 3 to 10 minutes each, professionally shot, polished, and branded for the university's new YouTube campaign. I stared at her, waiting for a punchline that never came. She continued outlining the scope of the project, scripting, shooting, editing, even composing original music. It was all on me. There was no team, just me and a pile of outdated equipment. Their cameras were so ancient they couldn't even handle HD, and their computers froze if I so much as opened an editing program. I'd have to use my own equipment, software, and expertise, all for $2,200 a month. When I pointed out that this workload seemed unreasonable, Patricia's face softened into a rehearsed smile. "Don't worry about the quantity," she said. "Focus on quality. That's what we care about here." Her words seemed reassuring at the time, so I took a deep breath and decided to give it my all. I stayed late every night, learning to work around the university's ancient equipment and trying to create videos that were not just passable but exceptional. For the first month, Patricia seemed pleased. She'd stop by my desk, complimenting my ideas and my work ethic. I started to believe that maybe this would work out. The smoker witch hunt. Everything changed the day Patricia discovered I was a smoker. It happened during a rare moment of downtime when I stepped outside for a cigarette. I rarely smoked at work, not wanting to give anyone the wrong impression, but that day I needed the break. As I lit up, Patricia walked by. She froze, her eyes narrowing as she took in the cigarette in my hand. She didn't say a word, just gave me a look of pure disdain before walking off. I didn't think much of it at the time, but from that moment on, Patricia's attitude toward me shifted dramatically. The supportive manager who once praised my work now seemed determined to make my life miserable. She began nitpicking everything. Asterisk, you smell like smoke after your breaks. It's unprofessional. Asterisk, why were you 5 minutes late this morning? We need punctuality. Asterisk, you should be available during your lunch break if the team needs you. She started leaving passive-aggressive sticky notes on my desk, criticizing things she hadn't cared about before. Attention to detail is critical, one note read. Another said, timeliness shows commitment. I was already putting in 60-hour weeks, sacrificing my personal life to meet her impossible demands, and now I was being reprimanded for taking a moment to breathe. My coworkers noticed too. One of them, an older woman who'd been at the university for years, pulled me aside one day. "Patricia hates smokers," she whispered. "She's gotten people fired over it before. Watch your back." The ambush. 5 months into the job, I was summoned to the director's office for a performance review. The email didn't say much, but the tone felt ominous. When I walked in, Patricia was already there, sitting across from the director with her legs crossed and a smug expression on her face. My stomach sank. The director, a no-nonsense woman who rarely looked up from her laptop, got straight to the point. "We're halfway through the year," she said, her voice cold and detached. "You've only completed 30 videos. That's less than half of your KPI." I tried to explain. I told them about the outdated equipment, the impossible workload, and the fact that I was essentially running an entire production department on my own. I pointed out that the 30 videos I had completed were performing exceptionally well, breaking viewership records on their YouTube channel. But Patricia wasn't having it. "He's just making excuses," she said, cutting me off mid-sentence. "If he can't handle the workload, we'll find someone who can." Her tone was dripping with condescension, and I felt my blood boiling. The director nodded, her expression unreadable. "We'll hire a professional production house to finish the project," she said. That's when it hit me. Patricia had no idea what she was getting herself into. The sabotage and setup. One of my responsibilities at the university had been maintaining a database of local production houses. Before leaving, I made a few adjustments to that database. Every contact number and email address was swapped out for fake ones, except one. That one belonged to a small production house where my friend worked as a junior director. I called him that evening. "How would you like to land a six-figure contract and fast-track your career?" I asked. He was intrigued, and as I explained my plan, his excitement grew. I told him I would coach his team on how to pitch the project to Patricia and the director, ensuring they won the contract. In return, his company would pay me a 15% finder's fee. His boss, sensing the opportunity, agreed without hesitation. Over the next few days, I worked closely with my friend's team, crafting a pitch so tailored and polished it was impossible to resist. We rehearsed every detail, from the language they'd use to the visuals they'd present. By the time the day of the pitch arrived, they were ready to dazzle. Patricia and the director were blown away. "It's like they've been working with us for years," Patricia exclaimed, completely unaware of my involvement. They signed the contract on the spot, committing to a budget that was far beyond anything they'd planned. The fallout: hiring a professional production house was far more expensive than keeping me on staff. Each video cost 2 to 3 times my monthly salary, and they burned through the project's entire budget in just a few months. Meanwhile, I collected my sweet 15% finder's fee, roughly 15 months of my salary, and used the money to enroll in film school overseas. I treated myself to a month-long vacation in Bali, sipping cocktails on the beach and finally letting myself relax. But the story didn't end there. One evening, while watching the sunset in Bali, I got a call from a former coworker. She was laughing so hard I could barely understand her. "Patricia's been fired," she finally managed to say. Apparently, the university's chancellor had discovered the project's massive budget overrun and was furious. Patricia had approved the expenses without proper authorization, desperate to meet her KPIs. The chancellor didn't just fire her, he publicly reprimanded the director for allowing the project to spiral out of control. Both of them left the university in disgrace. Karma's a beautiful thing. My friend, meanwhile, was promoted to a full director at his production house, thanks to the high-profile deal. And me? I was living my best life, sipping cocktails on a tropical beach, knowing I turned the tables on a toxic boss who underestimated me. TLDR, got fired from a toxic job in LA because my boss hated that I smoked. But I orchestrated a deal with a production house, walked away with a year's pay, and watched her career implode when the project's budget exploded. Karma, my friends, is a beautiful thing.